It finally happened, and the industry is in full panic mode. Honda just landed a bike in America at $5,000 flat. And suddenly, every excuse, every justification, every market reality the suits have been hiding behind just got exposed for what it really is. For a decade, we heard it. Entry level doesn't work. Riders want financing. You can't build a real bike for that price. They said it couldn't happen. They said it wouldn't work. They said the market was done. Yet here we are. Dealers are scrambling. Competitors are redoing their price sheets. And investors are quietly shifting their attention. Most importantly, this moment could finally open the door again for riders who've been priced out for a decade. Watch this video all the way to the end, and you'll see exactly what changed and how you can use it to your advantage. Market reckoning. The Honda Rebel 300 is set to hit United States dealers at roughly $5,000 out the door. And it is not a rumor anymore. Quiet internal distributor paperwork, the kind that never makes the glossy brochures, shows the first batch earmarked for a handful of test regions. The reason is simple and blunt. Demand finally lined up with a supply chain that could support it. For years, riders talked about wanting a true starter bike that did not feel disposable, something you could wrench on, tour on, and hand down without taking out a second mortgage. The Rebel 300 always fit that wish list overseas. The problem was never interest. The problem was whether any importer could land it, support it, and still keep the sticker under that 5,000 mark without bleeding out on every unit. Behind closed doors, a few distributors started running new numbers. They watched used prices climb on older small Hondas. They saw younger and returning riders staring at mid-displacement cruisers they simply could not justify. Once demand was proven on paper, they approached Honda with a different pitch. If the brand could guarantee volume and parts flow, those distributors would push a budget-friendly Rebel 300 into the United States as a pilot. Targeted dealer approvals followed, and the first crates were cleared. The real question hanging over every garage is simple. How did they make 5,000 work without cutting the soul out of the bike? Factory alchemy. To understand the price, you have to look past the showroom and into the factory math. Industry analysts who track production costs have been watching Honda tighten its mid-displacement lines for years. Instead of chasing wild styling experiments or endless option packages, they focused the Rebel 300 program on repeatable, efficient builds. One frame family, one basic engine family, and carefully chosen shared components across multiple models. That is where the first savings came from. When you run hundreds of thousands of similar parts through stamping, casting, and machining, your per-unit cost drops fast. The Rebel 300 benefits directly from that volume. It is not some bespoke one-off that needs its own exotic hardware. It shares controls, fasteners, and sub-assemblies with other proven models, which means the cost of every lever, bracket, and bracket bolt is already beaten down by scale. The second piece of the equation lives in supplier geography. Analysts point out that Honda leaned on regional vendors clustered close to final assembly. Instead of shipping small components halfway around the world, many pieces travel only a short distance by truck. That change alone can shave real money off each bike once you multiply it across a full production run. Less distance, fewer handlers, lower damage rates. None of this sounds dramatic, and that is exactly why it works. Simple, disciplined engineering and vendor planning are what let a Rebel 300 sit near $5,000 instead of drifting towards $7,000. Yet manufacturing is only half the story, because getting from the plant to an American dealer can still kill a good price if the freight plan is sloppy. So how did they keep the landed cost under control once the bikes left the factory floor? If you ride on a budget and want straight talk, hit like, subscribe for more no BS breakdowns, and tell me how prices look at your local dealer. Freight warfare. The answer sits in the shipping records, not the marketing materials. Port documentation shows that instead of dribbling a few units at a time into mixed freight loads, the Rebel 300 shipments are packed in dense, dedicated containers. Full boxes, standardized crates, minimal wasted space. That matters more than most riders realize. When a manufacturer pays for a container, every empty corner is lost money. Filling them with uniform bikes on a tight schedule is one of the cleanest ways to keep each unit's share of that bill down. From there, the paperwork shows pre-negotiated handling agreements at key ports. That means fixed fees, predictable turnaround, and fewer surprise charges tacked onto each crate. For importers, uncertainty is expensive. When you already know what the port will charge, you can plan your margin and still keep the showroom price honest. It also cuts down on delays, which is huge. Bikes sitting on a dock are tying up capital without earning anyone a dime. Once the machines clear inspection, they do not trickle out alone. They ride inside bulk inland shipments on rail and truck, routed to regional warehouses that break them down into dealer loads. One big journey, then a few short ones, instead of a long list of scattered shipments that each chew through fuel, time, and handling fees. That kind of discipline does not grab headlines, but it carves real dollars off the final figure stamped on the tag hanging from the handlebar. Even with freight under control, there was still one potential deal breaker. Could anyone promise that parts and service would be strong enough to support a budget Rebel 300 without leaving owners stranded the first time something wore out? Dealer gambit. That concern is exactly why the first wave is not a nationwide blast. According to dealer conversations, Honda and its distribution partners chose a small group of rural and small-town independents as the proving ground. These are shops where the service writers still know regulars by first name, and where a new model is actually noticed, not buried in a sea of high-dollar inventory. Those dealers were not just handed keys and told to hope. They were given clear parts lists, promised stocking levels, and region-specific support contacts. In plain terms, they were assured that when a Rebel 300 needs a lever, a gasket, or a replacement shock, they would not be waiting months for a crate to arrive. At the same time, the compliance work had already been run quietly in the background. Lighting, noise, emissions, all the boring but necessary checkboxes were handled before any crate hit an American dock. That kept state-level surprises to a minimum and prevented the first batch from getting locked in regulatory limbo. So here we are, standing at the start of a new price point with a familiar badge. The Rebel 300 is finally stepping into American light, and the only thing left to ask is how it feels when a rider throws a leg over and lives with it day after day. Service salvation. The first thing that jumps out on a Rebel 300 is not a gimmick. It is how much of the machine you can actually see and touch without a fight. Cables are routed clean, covers are limited, and the core hardware sits where a rider with a basic tool roll can reach it. Independent teardown notes point out that Honda clearly built this layout with long-term owners in mind, not just lease cycles. Valve inspection points are not buried. You do not need to strip half the bike just to check clearances. A patient home wrench with a manual, a feeler gauge, and an afternoon can get in there without inventing new words. The same goes for chain access. The path from countershaft to rear sprocket stays open, free from unnecessary guards that turn a simple adjustment into a weekend project. Greasing, tensioning, and eventual replacement look like straight-line jobs. Electrical routing follows the same thinking. Main runs are grouped and clipped where you expect them, not snaked through hidden channels that force a dealer visit for every small fault. Fasteners stay consistent across panels, so you are not hunting for 6 different bit sizes just to pull a side cover. For older riders who grew up with machines that respected their time, these choices feel familiar in the best way. All of that sounds great on paper, but the question hanging over any honest mechanic is simple. When someone finally tore one down past the showroom polish, did the internal layout really hold up to those first impressions? Teardown revelation. Independent. Shop techs did not waste any time finding out. Once the first Rebel 300 rolled onto a lift, they treated it like they would any new platform. Plastics off, tank up, subframes loosened, harnesses exposed. What they found backed up the early optimism. Modules are actually modules, not mystery bricks, that fail and take 3 other systems down with them. The ignition components, charging system pieces, and control switches come apart as separate items, each with its own straightforward mounting and connector. Shop notes highlight how few special tools were needed. Most of the work relied on common sockets, open-end wrenches, and a decent screwdriver set. That means more of the ownership life can be handled in a home garage without begging a dealer for access to proprietary gear. Looking at that bench full of parts, one conclusion stood out. Someone in the design chain expected these bikes to be opened up and put back together by real hands. Of course, pretty diagrams only mean so much. The next test was to see how all those choices actually felt when the machine was out where it belongs, covering miles. Road Testament. Early riders who have put genuine saddle time on the Rebel 300 describe something that many modern bikes forgot: calm competence. The chassis settles in quickly, with a neutral steering feel that does not punish a relaxed grip. At low speeds, the bike tracks smoothly enough for slow parking lot turns, figure eights, and tight gas station maneuvers without drama. Get it out onto open 2-lane highway, and the story stays steady. The seating triangle favors an upright stance instead of a cramped crouch. Bars meet the hands without a stretch, and mid-mounted pegs keep the knees in a natural bend. For older backs and worn knees, that matters more than peak power figures. Riders report that an hour on the Rebel 300 feels like an hour, not a wrestling match. Vibration levels stay controlled at practical cruising speeds, which means mirrors remain useful and fingers do not tingle after a day of back roads. Hearing those reports is one thing. The next concern for any long-haul-minded rider is how that character holds up when the odometer climbs and the bike is pushed through loaded weekends, rain, and rough pavement. Endurance verdict. Short-term abuse runs are not the whole story of durability, but they can reveal a lot. Weekend test logs from riders who deliberately pushed the Rebel 300 through long days, rough surfaces, and light luggage loads point to a chassis that takes honest use without complaining. Frames stayed straight, with no odd creaks or alignment quirks showing up after repeated pothole hits and gravel stretches. Basic suspension components maintained their behavior even after extended runs on broken pavement. Bolted joints, often the first to loosen on cheaper platforms, held torque better than some skeptics expected. Testers checked key fasteners after their rides and found only minor movement in predictable spots, nothing that suggested a design flaw. Controls and pivots stayed smooth under dust and light rain, helped by simple design that allows easy cleaning and lubrication. Those weekend miles also showed how the machine handled realistic loads. A small tail bag, a tool kit, maybe a light duffel on a rack, all carried without causing wobbles or wallow at sane speeds. Those early durability signals set the stage for a larger question hanging over the entire market. As more of these machines roll in, how will shops and parts suppliers position themselves to keep up with riders who finally have an affordable bike they can actually live with? Shop renaissance. Out in smaller towns, the Rebel 300 is already changing conversations. Independent shops that have survived every boom and bust are looking at this $5,000 price point and seeing something rare. A machine they can sell to working riders without feeling like salesmen for the finance office. In interviews, several owners talked about the same thing. They finally have a new bike they can park on the floor and recommend to a younger rider or a retiree on a fixed income with a straight face. One longtime service manager said he had not seen this kind of interest in an entry-level model in years. As word spread that a name-brand machine was landing under that familiar $5,000 mark, walk-in questions picked up. Old customers brought in family members who had always wanted to ride but stayed away from the payment numbers. Some of those prospects did something the industry has not seen enough of lately. They filled out reservation forms for a new machine, instead of just scanning the used bulletin board. Street-level enthusiasm at mom and pop stores is one thing. Large chains looking at quarterly reports have a very different set of worries when a machine like this walks through their doors. If you want to stay ahead of what manufacturers and dealers are really doing, hit subscribe and stick around. I will keep connecting the dots so older riders are never the last to know when the game changes for you. Retail panic. Inside the bigger multi-brand showrooms, the Rebel 300 did not arrive as a feel-good story. It arrived as a pressure point. Internal memos show that within a few weeks of the first shipments, managers were instructed to move budget and mid-range machines closer to the front of the floor. The idea was simple. Put the value story where customers see it first, before they wander deep into racks of high-dollar metal they might admire but never buy. Chains also rolled out a wave of bundle offers tied to the new model. Helmet and jacket packages, prepaid service plans, and slightly stretched financing terms appeared around the Rebel 300 as soon as interest spiked. Those moves are not done out of charity. They are meant to protect margin. When the sticker is lower, the only place left to build profit is accessories and services. A sharp buyer can use that to their advantage, but it shows you exactly how seriously the big players take a bike at this price. Those tactical changes are just the public face. Behind closed doors, the companies that build rival models are wrestling with a harder question. Do they answer this move or hope it blows over? Rival upheaval. When word of the Rebel 300's United States price reached competing manufacturers, the first reaction was disbelief. Then came the meetings. Strategy summaries that have since leaked in outline form show that at least one rival brand halted the launch of a planned mid-displacement entry, choosing to reevaluate where it would land on the price ladder. That is not a small decision. Development money had already been spent. Marketing drafts were already floating around. Pausing that train means the Rebel 300 rattled more than just showroom managers. Other companies did not hit the brakes outright, but they did order fresh pricing models. Product teams were told to revisit assumptions about what riders would pay for basic, dependable transportation. Some lines that had crept upward over the years suddenly looked exposed. The presence of a well-known name under $5,000 forces every mid-tier machine around it to justify its number. If you are asking thousands more, you had better bring more than paint and a badge. Corporate pride is one thing. The people with money on the line every trading day are looking at the Rebel 300 and asking a colder question. Where does the smart money move when a value play starts taking ground? Capital shift. Analysts who cover the motorcycle world for major funds live in spreadsheets, not garages, but they understand one thing very well. A model that sells in volume at a stable margin can quietly outperform flashier halo bikes over time. Early sales snapshots and reservation counts for the Rebel 300 have already shown enough traction to get their attention. Market notes in recent weeks mention a subtle but noticeable shift of confidence toward brands with efficient production lines and strong supplier discipline. Portfolio managers have started trimming exposure to companies that rely heavily on high-priced, low-volume models, while adding weight to those better positioned in the mid-displacement space. They are not dumping anyone outright. They are tilting the scale toward outfits that can spin up an answer to the Rebel 300, quickly or already have something similar in the pipeline. To investors, a price point that opens the door for more riders is not just a story. It is a growth channel. All of that is happening while another pressure system builds outside United States borders. Production numbers, labor costs, and rider demand overseas have already been reshaping expectations. The Rebel 300's arrival is not a standalone event. It is a sign that global forces have finally pushed hard, enough on American soil, global pressure. For years, riders in the United States were told the same story about small, affordable bikes. Supposedly, they were either not profitable enough or not right for the market. Meanwhile, across Asia and Latin America, manufacturers were quietly selling huge numbers of honest, mid-displacement machines every single year. Those riders did not see them as toys. They used them for commuting, light touring, and daily life. That steady demand gave factories something precious: volume. In countries like India, Thailand, and Brazil, plants were already geared around, turning out reliable, modestly sized machines at scale. tooling costs were long since paid off. Supplier networks sat right next to the assembly lines. That structure let builders squeeze cost without cutting corners that matter. Over time, those export-focused plants developed production lines capable of feeding multiple regions with the same core platforms, including the Rebel 300. The more bikes they built, the lower the unit cost dropped. Pressure from abroad has done its part. The next force to watch comes from closer to home, in the halls where trade rules and import duties are written. Tariff storm. When a well-known brand manages to sell a new machine near $5,000, people in suits start reading the fine print. Trade analysts and policy staff in Washington have already begun asking whether long-standing duty structures still make sense in a world where global production is tightly integrated. Internal think tank briefs, quietly circulated among committee members, point out that some tariffs were built for an earlier era, when imports were rare and domestic makers held most of the deck. Those papers raise a simple question. Are current rules unintentionally keeping certain classes of affordable motorcycles out of reach for American buyers, even when they are built to solid standards? A few lawmakers on trade and transportation panels have pushed for hearings to revisit how different displacement categories are treated. They are not calling for open gates with no protection. They are asking whether the ladder of duties still reflects modern reality or simply locks in old habits. Policy debates take time. While think tanks argue and committees schedule hearings, dealers and service departments have to make day-to-day decisions about how to keep these bikes on the road without drowning under new workload. Garage armament. Shops do not have the luxury of waiting for perfect clarity from Washington. Once a model like the Rebel 300 starts landing in numbers, they need people, parts, and procedures ready. Dealer networks have already begun lining up training sessions covering the specifics of the platform. Service managers want their techs familiar with the layout, common wear points, and recommended intervals before the first wave of real miles comes back through the door. The smarter outfits are treating it as an investment, not a burden. Training schedules shared among dealers show short, focused sessions built around real tear-down work rather than corporate slideshows. Techs pull tanks, examine harness paths, and run through common maintenance operations with factory reps on hand to answer questions. That way, when riders start showing up with first service tickets, the shop is not fumbling in front of them. For a price-conscious owner, seeing confident wrench work matters as much as any sales pitch. Prepared labor and thoughtful parts planning set the stage. The final piece of the puzzle is what all of this means for riders themselves over the next 5 years, both at the wallet and at the cultural level. Cultural rebirth. Look ahead a few seasons and picture the likely scene if the Rebel 300 does what it is built to do. Used listings start to fill with clean examples, priced in a way that lets new riders step in without fear. Resale stabilizes because the platform earns a reputation for taking care of the basics without constant drama. A solid, simple machine at the entry end has a way of pulling the entire ladder back towards sanity. Other brands will either answer with their own honest offerings or watch that segment slip away. Riders who buy in early will have time to build real relationships with their bikes. Oil changes in the driveway, chain adjustments on a Saturday, brake pad swaps with a buddy handing over tools. That kind of hands-on ownership has been fading under layers of electronics and locked down hardware. A straightforward Rebel 300 in the garage can bring it back. In turn, that changes how people talk about riding. Less focus on pure status, more on miles ridden and work done with your own hands. In the end, one modestly priced machine cannot rewrite the whole story on its own, yet it can mark the point where the plot starts to turn. Whether the Rebel 300 becomes the spark for a lasting reset, or simply a warning shot across the industry's bow, will depend on how builders, dealers, and riders respond from here. If this $5,000 Rebel 300 changes everything, what does that mean for you, rider, mechanic, or dealer? Tell me below. Are you reserving one, watching from the sidelines, or ready to flip the market? Smash the like if you appreciate Straight Talk breakdowns, and subscribe so you don't miss the next deep dive. where we follow real ownership stories and dealer fallout. Drop a comment with your local prices or first-hand impressions. I read them all.